Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Pamela Marie Edmunds, and this is Love Never Dies radio show. And I am broadcasting this from the Red Rocks of Sedona, Arizona. And just discussing low 70s here, gorgeous day, nice and sunny, a little bit of wind, but it's just a nice day to be out and about. And I talked to a number of you people, and apparently it's nice in various parts across the country. I'm glad to see some new faces. And I want to say we're going to have a great show tonight. Got a wonderful guest here who we've met before, and we interestingly, I'm going to chuckle, had an interesting phone conversation last night, and I'm just going to leave it there. Okay, we're not going to go into the details, but it was a very interesting conversation, and I think we both kind of saw that, should I say, the universe or our guides, our teachers wanted us to connect by phone, just for a little bit of humor.
That's for sure.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So I just want to say, for those of you who are newcomers, new faces here, that this show is every week, Wednesday evenings. Here in Arizona, it's 5 p.m. And I believe this time of the year, it's 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and all times in between that. And for any of you who may be interested in listening to the show in the future, and you take, well, gee, how do I track Pamela's show? What are they? What is the codes, etc., to get into her Zoom room? Well, all of that information is on my website and is there all the time for you to look. It's PamelaMarieEdmunds.com. There's a page there dedicated just to the show. And matter of fact, beautiful picture of Josie listed there as one of my upcoming guests, which she's my guest tonight. And right now it's time for me to catch up and add a few more in there. But the meeting ID number and the passcode are always there. Also, any of the services that I facilitate, I am a medium. I do channeling. Actually, I've got a huge group of individuals who are open to wanting to speak to you and assist you in your journey, especially in this time. They calling themselves the wise ones. They're all listed on my website. I also work with animals and also do teaching. All of that is there. I want to say that okay, for those new of you, if you've heard me say this before, please accept my apologies for repeating. But this show is being recorded right now and will be downloaded to my YouTube channel, Pamela Marie Edmunds. And if you like what's there, when you do go to my channel, please subscribe. That way you'll get notified of upcoming events and shows. Plus, the more people that subscribe, the better it is on my end here. And I want to say, right now I've got 61 people want to get to that first hurdle, 100. That way YouTube allows me to put in my URL what I want. So I'm going to be putting Pamela Marie Edmunds there. So it makes it easier for people to find, etc. So anyway, tonight, Josie, I'm going to give your middle name, your maiden name, correct? Josie Varga. Welcome, dear. And you are where right now? You are in New Jersey, dear?
New Jersey, yes.
Yes. And Josie and I have done interviews, at least one before, I'm going to say, back when I had
two. Yeah.
Yep, back when I had a show called Bridge Between Two Worlds. And I'm going to say it's probably about 7 years or so at least. And Bridge Between Two Worlds is still active. I've given it to actually a friend who is June Elaine Evans up in New Hampshire, because I felt like it was time for me to start something new. with a new name, a new energy. So that's what Love Never Dies is about. And this is what we're going to be talking about, some of the experiences that happens between the two worlds. So Josie, I'm going to start there by reading your biography. I have it right here, okay?
Okay.
That way people know a little more about you. Although some of them who were here obviously know some about you, don't they? Don't they? They wouldn't come running if they didn't know. It says, we can't always plan what happens in life. And sometimes the unexpected leads us just where we are meant to be. Josie Varga's life was turned upside down when a deceased friend who passed in the World Trade Center attacks of 9/11 came to her with a vivid, lucid message for his grieving wife. The incredible experience sent her on a journey to investigate afterlife communication and the possibility of life after death. What she found is incredible validation that death is but a new beginning and no one really dies alone. A celebrated author, blogger, and motivational speaker, she has transformed lives and warmed hearts worldwide. Her tireless afterlife research has helped to steer the study of consciousness and the integration of mind, body, and spirit, while comforting the bereaved as they realize their loved ones are still very much with them. Passionate about her life's purpose, she's committed to changing lives one story at a time. Josie was a featured speaker for Global Oneness Day 2019 and has made numerous media appearances, including Coast to Coast AM, Midnight in the Desert, Darkness Radio, Unknown Country, the Paranormal Podcast, and Angel Quest Radio. She is also a sought-after motivational speaker who inspires others to find happiness within. World-renowned happiness guru Robert Holden, PhD, said, I believe Josie is an angel who has taken human form so as to teach us the art of true self-acceptance and happiness. She recently worked on a television pilot based on her best-selling book, Visits from Heaven. She loves to unwind with friends in a glass of wine, enjoys taking walks on the beach, and would rather dance than walk. Josie's incredible story will touch your soul and challenge you to see life in a new light. Life, she says, is eternal, and so are we. Her book, A Call from Heaven, Personal Accounts of Deathbed Visits, Angelic Visions, and Crossing to the Other Side, provides perhaps the most compelling evidence of life after death to date. She set out to research deathbed phenomena and hence write her book after her primary care physician told her about a mind-boggling experience involving a patient of his. What she found is incredible validation that death is only a transition from one dimension to the next. She also has a popular group on Facebook for people to comfortably share their spiritual experiences and know that they are not alone. With several other projects in the works, she recently completed her debut YA fiction novel. We're going to have to ask her what that is, and is working on her latest nonfiction title. She's a proud mother, lives in Westfield, New Jersey with her husband and 2 daughters. For more information, please visit her website at www.josievarga. It's JOSIEVARGA.com. Awesome, Josie. You've got some wonderful accomplishments, dear, and I'm so glad that you're here tonight.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Pamela.
You're welcome. You're welcome, dear. And you've got how many books right now completed?
6.
6. Can you list them so people can hear them?
Well, first I started out with Footprints in the Sand, which basically talks about, as you know, I was born with a disability known as cerebral palsy.
Yep.
So Footprints in the Sand basically talks about my life and the lessons that I learned along the way. It's a motivational autobiography, if you will.
Yep.
So that's Footprints in the Sand. Then I wrote Visits from Heaven. And from there, I wrote Visits to Heaven. Visits from Heaven, by the way, is about afterlife communication, evidential afterlife communication.
Okay.
Visits to Heaven is about near-death experiences. Then I wrote Make Up Your Mind to Be Happy, okay, which talks about how true happiness is within. Then I wrote about Divine Visits, which is about divine interventions.
Okay.
Then that led me to write A Call from Heaven, which talks about deathbed phenomena. And now I'm working on a new book called, well, actually, I mean, I don't know. I'm not, the title is not set
That's
in
okay.
stone.
That's okay. You'll find the right title, right?
Yeah, but life
You don't have.
after, yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Wow. And
Before and
considering,
afterlife.
right,
Before and
because
afterlife is the working title. So
right. And considering you had some major I want to say work to do for yourself to get yourself in a place to do this work. I mean, you're quite an achiever, I need to say. Okay.
well, thank you. There are times there are times when I say, oh, this is too much. I just want to like watch TV and you know. But I consider it, Pamela, a privilege to do what I do. And
Oh,
you and I were talking last night,
yep.
and I told you about that message that I got from that woman after she said to me after reading A Call from Heaven. I ended each chapter reading these stories and saying to myself, oh my God, yes, this is true. She said, I lost my husband. She said, and I want to thank you, Josie, for the peace I am feeling tonight. And to me, that is what it's all about. That she is the reason that I keep writing. She is the reason that I keep pushing forward. Um, because you can't put a dollar amount. You can't put a dollar amount on that. That's not what
Right.
life is about. Life
Right.
is about making a difference and helping other people. So
Exactly. And that's what you're doing. And you also have a couple Facebook groups, correct?
yes,
And can you please announce what those are so people can find them if they're interested?
sure. I have visits from heaven. There's a closed group and visits from heaven, an open group, and then there's also proof of the afterlife. Okay, and all 3 groups are so that people can share their experiences. One thing that I found in the beginning of my research, people were afraid to share their experience, and I have to be honest. When it first happened to me, I was afraid to share my experience. I was afraid that people would think I was crazy, and I realized, no, I needed to share my experience because I knew I could help the bereaved. Um, and
Right.
if I could share my experience real quick for people who don't know,
Right.
um, the reason I started this, the reason I got into this, is because my husband had a friend, a former boss, who died in the World Trade Center attacks of 9/11. And what is important here is that I never met him. I never met Rich. I saw
Okay.
pictures of him, but I never met him.
Right.
So on this particular night, I had a vivid, lucid dream. And I had never experienced anything like this before. And I see my husband. Well, first, before I saw him, I felt myself. I literally like felt my body moving and going down this long hallway. And I'm going down this long hallway, and there's doors on either side of me. And all of a sudden, I see this door to my right. It's at the very end. I go into the room, and I see desks and windows everywhere. And all of a sudden, I look up, and I see my husband's friend. Okay. And he looks at me, Pamela, and he says, Josie, thank you for mentioning me in your book. And when he said that, it was telepathic. It was mind to mind, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what he meant by that is, in my first book, Footprints in the Sand, I mentioned him in the epilogue of the book. He had written an inspiring message after the death of his father, and he talked about how each wasted minute in life was a crime. And after I finished the book, my husband John said to me, this is really beautiful. You should consider putting it in your book. So talk about how the universe works. So I said to myself, I read it and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. Okay. Because Rich died 2 years later after writing that. So I put it in the book. And in the dream, he said, Josie, thank you for mentioning me in your book. And for reasons that I cannot explain after all these years, I look at him and I said, Rich, you have to prove to me that this is really you, telepathically. I said, you have to prove to me that this is really you. And with that, he walked up to a desk and he picked up, it looked like you remember those, the Motorola flip phones that they used to have?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he picked up this Motorola, well, I don't know if it was a Motorola, but it was a flip phone. And he picked it up and he showed me a picture of him, his wife, and his son. So he shows me the phone and he says, Boston is okay. Boston is okay. Had no idea whatsoever what Boston is okay meant. However, intuitively, immediately, I understood, okay, this is a message. I got to get to his wife. And the next thing you know, I don't know how to describe it, but it was almost like going through a window. And I saw myself kind of outside. And he looked like, I don't know if it really was a pickup truck, but that's what it looked like.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of looked like the back of a pickup truck. And he's standing behind his wife and son. And he looks at me. And he's like, okay, Josie, go ahead, give her the message. And kind of takes his hands and pushes me forward, just pushes me forward.
Yep.
And with that, I woke up. I felt like something hit me in my chest. I felt like I woke up in a sitting position, panting and out of breath. Was I scared? Absolutely. What's ironic about it is during the experience, there was no fear whatsoever. And I often say that it felt more real than this reality, which is something that NDEers always say,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like it just seemed very natural to see him the way I did. It was like, oh, but then when I came back, I was like, oh my God, what just happened? And how am I going to explain this to my husband? And my daughter was 3 months old, I believe, at the time. And my first thought was to run into my daughter Leah's room and run into my daughter Erica's room and check on both of them. Okay. Once I knew that they were okay, I went to call my husband, who was already at work. And his reaction was something that didn't surprise me. He was like, you're absolutely crazy. You want me to call? Yeah, you're crazy. You want me to call this woman who just lost her husband, and you want me to tell her that Boston is okay? Like, are you serious right now? And I was like, I know this doesn't make sense, but I'm telling you, what happened last night was real, and you have to do this,
Mm-hmm.
And we struck up a compromise, okay, because he didn't want anything to do with this. So I said to him, well, I wrote an email to my husband explaining what happened. and he forwarded the email to Richard's sister-in-law, his wife's sister, because they both work in financial services. He knew her. He had her email.
Mhm.
And he told me the minute he hit send, Pamela, he was like wishing he could retract that email. Like, oh, like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is, it went through. 2 weeks later, I hadn't heard anything, and he's all nervous, thinking, oh my God, she thinks I'm crazy. I shouldn't have done that. But I felt great because I knew I did what Spirit wanted me to do.
Exactly.
I was happy. So we're on vacation, and all of a sudden he gets a message on his BlackBerry. And you know how you read something, but you don't quite get it the first time around? He's reading his text message, email aloud. And what the sister basically said was, I don't know how she knew this, but they had a brother in Boston. I never met him. I never met his wife. I never met anyone. Well, she had a brother in Boston. And at the time, she was considering selling her home and moving to Boston. But she felt guilty because she had just, purchased the house with her husband and then he passed away. So that's why, his message to me made perfect sense at that point. But the first time my husband read the message, both of us didn't get it. I don't know why. And then he read it again and we both went, like, wow. It was shocking because it's not, okay. So a deceased person came to me in my dreams with a message for his wife that was not validated. Okay. But
Mhm.
it's not only that you understand life after death, like communication is possible. But what does that say about us? What does that say about the physical body? It says that we are much more than the physical body, and that reality is not what we think it is.
Yes.
So it was a complete life changer for me. And at first, I didn't want to do anything about it. And I was telling my sister-in-law, who I know is on with us, hi Sherry, but my sister-in-law and I were talking, and she said to me, "Don't you realize that you've been given a gift?" And I didn't think of it that way until she said it. And when she said it, I'm like, you know what? She's right. I have been given a gift,
Yeah.
and I need to do something with this. So
Yeah.
I started to research afterlife phenomena, and one thing led to another. But I didn't do it with the intent of writing a book. I did it because I needed to know that I wasn't alone. I needed to know. And then I found stories from around the world, you know, and all these synchronicities were taking place. And that's how Visits from Heaven came into, happen.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Okay. Wow. That's one heck of a story that is really important to your work. It's
yes,
almost like if that hadn't happened, you wouldn't be sitting here right now talking about all this stuff, would you?
no, absolutely, absolutely not. And you know what else is ironic? I went on I did a radio interview in New York one day. So Visits from Heaven had come out, and I was waiting for Visits to Heaven, a near-death experience book, to come out.
Mhm.
I had made a comment to my husband before I left for the studio. I said, you know what, John? Visits from Heaven came out, and I haven't, quote unquote, heard from Rich. Like you come to me in your dream, you make me write this book, and then I don't hear from you. I was just having a conversation about that with him before I left for the studio. So I get to the studio, Pamela, right?
Mhm.
And there was a 17-year-old psychic medium that was going to be on the show with me that night. And we were out in the common area waiting for the producer to call us in. So we're standing there, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, Josie. And I said, what? He said, I have a gentleman here for you. So when he said that, what did I do? I turned. I'm like, okay, where's the gentleman, you know? And he said, no, in spirit. And I said, oh. So he started to describe the man that he saw, and he described Rich. And I said to him, I said, oh my God, that's Rich. And he looked over my shoulder and he said to me, yeah, he says, it's Rich, it's him. He said to tell you that you've been led to do what you do. And he said, oh, and by the way, he said, that book that you think is coming out when it's coming out, oh, it's not coming out then. It's coming out 2 months later. That was Visits to Heaven. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, what? Right? So all of a sudden, at that moment, the producer calls us in. So we don't get to finish the conversation. We go, we do the interview, and I never got to ask him about that.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks later, I get a phone call from AOE Press, Fourth Dimension Press. Oh, your book's not coming out in December. The book came out in February, 2 months later. So, I mean, you just can't make this up, you know?
No. And awesome. Now, Josie, we titled tonight's show after your most recent book, which I'm hearing so many titles right now, I'm confused. Which title is that again?
A Call to Heaven. A Call from Heaven, I mean.
All right. How did you come about that you needed to do this book?
You know, it's funny because every book I've written for a purpose, a reason. I was led to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the middle of working on Divine Visits, which was my book about divine interventions and angelic encounters and things like that. And I went to my primary care for a physical.
Yeah.
So I go to primary care physician.
Yep.
And we have a very, close relationship. He would just talk to me about my work and I'll talk to him about his work and things like that. So I walk in and he says to me, hey, so Josie, what are you working on these days? You working on any books? So I told him about Divine Visits. And I said to him, yeah, I was talking to a doctor and he said that these phenomena or these experiences are more common than most people realize. And he looked at me and he said, ha, yeah, I know. And
okay.
I looked at him and I said, what does that mean? And he said, well, I just had an experience this week. So what he told me was that he was at the hospital and he had this patient and they could do nothing more for her. So he went into her room to let her know that they were going to transport her somewhere else. And he says, I go into the room and, a bunch of her family members are there. I go up to her bed. I tell her, okay, we're going to transport you. And you know what she said to him? She said, his name is Dr. Toro. She says, no, Dr. Toro, it's my time. My grandson is here. Well, it turns out her grandson, Pamela, was killed in the Iraq War.
Aww.
Okay. So he said they're all watching her, and she starts carrying on a conversation with this unseen grandson. Okay. And then all of a sudden, she says she's ready. And within minutes, she passed away right in front of them.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So he tells me the story, and I said to him at that point, because they say it's lack of oxygen to the brain and all those theories. And I looked at him and I said, so do you believe she was hallucinating? And he said to me, oh, no, absolutely not. He said she was so coherent, right, that he said she was telling her best friend who was in the room, just because I die doesn't mean you can date my husband. So his point was she was completely coherent.
Yeah.
So he told me that, and I said to myself, okay, there's my next book. I have to research these deathbed phenomena. And it was really, it's really amazing because, you know, I had that experience with Rich. And I say to myself, oh, I could never have any other experience to top that. And then I've had many other experiences since then.
Right.
And you know, I have to say, A Call from Heaven was a real eye opener for me. It really was. You know what they say about people on their deathbed? They say no one is more truthful than they are on their deathbed. Okay, which is true. Think about that.
Yeah.
Why would you lie? You know,
Right.
on your deathbed. So, in order things that take place, I mean, number one, they talk about seeing their mother, angelic figures, you know, angels. It's really absolutely incredible. But what really was amazing for me, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but when I was working on the book, Dr. Bruce Grayson at the University of Virginia,
Okay.
he just wrote a book, a phenomenal book called After, and he has been like a mentor to me. Dr. Bruce Grayson, Dr. Jeffrey Long. You know, when I first started out in this, and I didn't know where to turn, and I had reached out to Dr. Jeffrey Long, he responded with nothing but kindness. And it's the same thing with, you know, Dr. Bruce Grayson. But Dr. Bruce Grayson wrote a paper about something he terms peak Darien, Darien, peak Darien experiences.
Okay.
And what that means is people who are on their deathbed who mention the presence of people they didn't know to have died. Imagine that. Let me give you an example. So he mentions the case of this little boy named Eddie Cuomo, a 9-year-old boy. So Eddie Cuomo has raging high fevers, okay? Really high fevers. And when he comes through, he tells his parents who are in the room and the doctors and nurses, he says, oh, I saw my, you know, Uncle Cuomo, my aunt, you know, he mentioned people, his grandparents that he saw on the other side. And all of a sudden he says, oh yeah, Mom and Dad, I saw Teresa. Teresa is his sister, who his parents believed was away at college. So the father obviously got really upset that he was mentioning his daughter, saying he saw the daughter with the deceased grandparents, you know, the sister. Okay. So they get very upset. They didn't want to believe what the son was saying. When the mother and father left the hospital and went home, they got a message from the school. The daughter did, in fact, die in a car accident the night before.
Wow.
But they didn't know it. So to me, you know, coming across stories like that was a real eye opener. I mean,
wow. Wow.
Really cannot explain that any other way other than to say that he really did go to the other side, that he really did see his sister. Because
Absolutely.
how did she know? How would he know that his sister passed away? And by the way, when he went to the other side, his sister said to him, Eddie, you have to go back. It's not your time.
Awesome.
You know?
Awesome. Josie, I got to turn another light on so I can see that.
Okay.
The light's changing here. There. That'll be better. Yes. Awesome.
I was wondering what was going on there.
And if anybody hears a cat talking here, my friend Sylvester just came in to hang out with us. He's here somewhere. So anyway, but yeah, the proof was in the experience the other side.
Right.
That was the bottom line. Yeah.
Right.
Amazing. Okay, hang on. You know what? The sun's going down here. Hold just a moment. You can talk if you want to share. I'll be right up just a second. I'm getting used to the there. That's better.
Okay.
I'm getting used to the changes. There. Okay, there now. Okay, much better. All right.
Yeah. And then
Okay.
the other thing that I found amazing while writing this book
Yep.
was something called terminal lucidity. Okay.
Terminal lucidity. Okay, it's
Yeah.
a new one. I've not heard that.
Yeah. So what that means is, say you're on your deathbed, and like the cases of Alzheimer's disease, for example.
Yep.
Okay. And people who are, have no brainstem activity or nothing, who haven't spoken for months, who nothing.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, they're on their deathbed, and right before they die, they have moments of lucidity, and they're able to say goodbye to their, loved ones, and talk to their loved ones, and then they die.
Yep.
There was a case, I think it was in the 1920s. There was a woman who was in a mental institution. She could not talk. She couldn't, do anything for herself.
Right.
Okay. Well, all of a sudden, the day that she died, the doctors heard her singing.
Wow.
This is a woman who never spoke, who they never heard a word from her entire life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the day that she died, about 30 minutes, 20 minutes before, I think her name was Ema, but she ended up singing to herself right before she died. And then she passed away. Then
Wow.
how is that possible? There's a case in New York. Dr. Scott Haig had a patient named David. So David had cancer. The,
Mm-hmm.
cancer. the cancer spread to his brain. He had no brainstem activity, could not talk, could not do anything. Was
Mm-hmm.
basically just, laying there. So his family is around his bed. All of a sudden, David wakes up.
Okay.
Okay? All of a sudden, David wakes up. Now, what's important here is to understand the brain doesn't suddenly fill up with new neurons. The brain is still considered dead. There's no brain function.
Mm-hmm.
Yet all of a sudden, these patients become alive, however you want to put it, and are able to say goodbye to their family members, and then they pass away. And doctors have no explanation for that. There is a doctor in Austria at the University of Vienna, and he
Mm-hmm.
he is doing a research project on people with Alzheimer's disease that this happens to, because it happens quite often, and there's no medical explanation for it. Because, like I said, you have no brainstem activity. Your brain, like Dr. Scott Haig from before, he said his brain was basically not there. This patient, David, his brain is basically not there. Yet he's able to wake up suddenly, say goodbye to his family, and then pass away.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But that's also all that you're sharing with us here shows how much research you have put into all this work.
Yeah, well, you know what? I've interviewed a lot of well-known doctors,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it's like I said, I consider it an honor. You know, I just interviewed Dr. John Hagen, and Dr. John Hagen um, is with the Missouri State Medical Association. He's a doctor, and
Mm-hmm.
he got approval to inform medical schools about near-death experiences. And to me, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
Because if doctors, not only doctors, but doctors and nurses, if they can learn more about near-death experiences and deathbed phenomena, it doesn't matter whether they believe or don't believe, but if they can understand it better, then they can help the patient. you know.
Well, interesting you mentioned that. I know we have at least 2 nurses here amongst the group tonight. And I'm sure there'll be others who will be listening to this recording once it's posted. So yeah.
Yeah, I joined an online forum. I'm not a nurse, obviously,
Mhm.
but I joined an online forum called allnurses.com. It's a wonderful forum. And
Mhm.
the reason I joined is because when I was working on A Call from Heaven, I figured these phenomena are going to be witnessed by who? The nurses and the doctors mostly. So let me go and talk to the nurses. And not surprisingly, one of the most popular threads was about deathbed phenomena. And I have to tell you, this was a crazy story, a favorite one of mine. So this nurse goes on there and she's talking about a patient. And she says the patient was one of those people that constantly hit the call button, and drove them all crazy, right?
Mhm.
So finally, this patient dies.
Right.
Okay. So they wait, the funeral home comes and picks up the body, you know. There's nobody now in this patient's room. It's empty. They're at the nursing station. All of a sudden, the call button starts going off. There's nobody in his room. Okay. There's nobody in his room, but that call button is going off and going off.
Oh.
So this nurse, one of them, who was a believer in spiritual phenomena,
Mhm.
actually goes to the room, and I forget the patient's name, but she says out loud to him, because it kept going off constantly. She says out loud to him, "You have passed away, Mr. Whatever his name was. You have passed away. Go to the light," right? And then within seconds, it stopped. So I was amazed by a lot of the stories that I found on that site. In fact,
Mhm.
my new book is going to include all of my research over the years. You know, um, everything from afterlife communication to near-death experiences to divine interventions to deathbed phenomena. I talk about the study of consciousness, which is another very, very important thing. Because when you think about it, if I said to you, Pamela, as a psychic medium, where's consciousness?
I'm going to call it energy that
But
survives.
but it's not limited to your brain, is it? No, it can't be.
No.
Because the general consensus among the medical community is that consciousness is a product of the brain, so it's in the brain. But that's not true. It can't be true, because if
Well,
it were,
right.
when you die, that's it. If it's in the body, when you die, the body dies. There's no consciousness, but yet we're able to still communicate after the body dies.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it can be a little bit of both. You know,
Mhm.
and Dr. Eben Alexander, I know you've heard about him.
Well, could you let other people know who he is?
He's a neurosurgeon, and he had a near-death experience. He was a doctor for like 30 years, and throughout his medical career, believed that consciousness was a product of the brain. Then he goes and he has a bacteria in his brain, and he had a near-death experience that basically changed full circle everything he learned in medical school. Then he suddenly realized, hey, wait a minute, my brain was not working, but yet I was still conscious. How can that be? You know, so it's just really it's really amazing. But he thinks of the brain more like a filter. You know,
Okay.
like a filter of consciousness. So
Right. And he's got a book out too regarding his experience too, I
yes,
believe. Yeah, I can't think the top of there, but wonderful. Do we want to see if anybody has any questions or shares here?
Sure.
Unless you're feeling there's something else that is important that you need to speak.
No. I can speak as we keep going.
Okay, what I'm going to tell people is if you want to share, say something, put your hand up, okay? And we'll go from there, all right? If you are blacked out, you bring yourself in here, or you're hiding behind a picture, bring yourself so we can see you. Any comments or questions for our wonderful guest here, Josie? The cat's responding to that. Lori, you want to say something, dear?
Well, as Josie was talking, all I could think of was how many surgeries Walter had.
And tell them who Walter is.
Walter is my son, and he died of brain cancer 5 years ago.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
5 years ago last week. And I remember the first time I asked him, did you go anywhere while you were under? And he said, no. Where would I go? And he would never answer me. And I thought, maybe he doesn't want to tell me, maybe he doesn't want me upset, but it's like, I really think you go someplace while they're doing that.
But still, some people have these experiences, but for some reason don't want to talk about them. You have to understand that too. And not everybody has an experience, and what I found very interesting. I recently heard that only 1 to 2% will voluntarily talk about something if they're not asked about it. So if I'm in the hospital, and well, not me, because I'd be telling everybody, but but in general, if you're in the hospital and you have an experience and you're not asked about it, you have a near-death experience or whatever it may be, only 1 to 2% will voluntarily talk about the experience. So it's quite it's possible that he might have had an experience and he didn't want to talk about it. And it's also possible that he just, didn't have an experience, or maybe he might not remember it.
Yeah.
I
was going to say, because my mom was here, took care of my mom, and she was watching TV, but she was talking, and all of a sudden her arm went up, and she goes, no, not Walter, the other one. And I went, oh, she must be talking to my brother-in-law who passed a couple of years before. And I said, are you talking to Fred? And she said, yeah.
Okay.
So,
but you knew enough to ask.
Yeah, it's like when I would go to see my son at the rehab/hospice, it was the brain injury unit. And there was one in particular patient there who was just always so much fun to be around. He waved. He would always be so excited. He'd wave really fast when he saw you, anybody. And it didn't matter how many times. He waved to me, I waved back, and then he looked over my shoulder and he waved. And I turned to look to see who was there, and I couldn't see anybody. And I said, oh, that's Eldon, because Eldon's always with me. And he just waved again and started up a conversation, and I just kept going on my merry way.
And you never asked who that person was that he could see?
Well, I assumed that it was a person named Eldon that's been hanging around for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Kind of like a protector, so to speak.
And how were you made aware of this presence?
A friend has known him for many lifetimes, and they were staying here with us for a while. And she said, if you don't mind, he'd like to stay here because you intrigue him. You are like somebody he's never met before. And I went, oh yeah, great. So, but we do, I always say, come on, we're going on an adventure. Let's hit the road. And if I ask nicely, sometimes he will show up in a picture and sometimes not, it depends on what's going on. But
wow. And that doesn't scare you?
No, when I first saw the picture, I was at the beach and I had a whole bunch of pictures and I went, what is this fog? It's not foggy out. So I got rid of them all but one. And when I got back to the house and I downloaded it on the computer, and when it brought it up, it was a face. And
Wow.
it scared the crap out of me. And I sent it to my friend and I went, what the hell is this? And she said, that's Eldon. But they move so fast, you're not going to get like a beautiful portrait picture of what they actually look like.
Right. But did you recognize that at all?
Well, I saw the eyes, the nose, the mouth. I saw the long mustache. And yeah, it was.
But it's not somebody you knew? It's not somebody?
No, I have no idea. No, it's a mist. It's a mist on the picture. But there was no fog that night.
Wow.
The other part of this story is Lori is a developing medium.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
So
that's an important part.
Oh, sorry.
So she's attracting a lot of this to her so that she can have the experiences, but she's very open to a lot of these experiences. So awesome.
Okay, I was wondering to myself, why is this guy hanging around?
Oh.
Okay, you left an important piece of information out there.
I'm sorry, I didn't think of that.
Well, thank you for allowing me to fit it in between the conversation here. So anyway, and Lori, if there's somebody who's gonna share something, it's gonna be Lori. Lori's always got something good to share.
True. I try.
Awesome.
I try.
Awesome.
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Lori. Who else would like to say something here to Josie to address? I don't know if anybody here has had any sort of experiences regarding observing a loved one with a deathbed experience, or any of that nature, or any of these other topics that Josie's been a big part of. Do I see Judy's hand going up? Yep. Okay. Let's unmute you, sweetie.
Okay.
There.
Well, my mother had Alzheimer's, and I took care of her here at home until she passed away. And I know she did extremely well, and I think staying in familiar surroundings had a lot to do with how well she did until she passed away. But she did see her loved ones. She saw her mother, her stepmother, her sisters, and she spoke with them. And there was a man standing, and it had to have been someone very tall, the way she looked, a man standing at the foot of her bed. And I knew what was going on with her. She was getting close to time to pass on, and I did not want her to die. I did everything I could to keep her here, and knowing not to let her go, but it's not an easy thing to do. And so she would ask me who that man was standing at the foot of her bed, and I would tell her I didn't see anyone. I said, Mother, no one's there. But finally, because she was seeing everybody, all of her family members who had passed on, I knew it was time. It was time. And so I had called the family to let them know that she was close to the end. And but see, I mean, we read about this, we hear about it, and when it happens to us, it's just so hard. I don't know. I hear about people who sit with other people as they pass and speak about what a lovely experience it is. Well, it was hard for me, and I was in the bed with Mother, and I knew my dad was standing right behind me. I knew he was there. He was there with Mother. And when Mother passed out of her body, she rubbed the back of my neck because I had my face down on her shoulder, and I could feel her hand on my hair and the back of my neck. And it was like she was saying, it's okay now. It's fine. And goodbye. Awesome. It was very difficult for me, but that was so beautiful. And And it was so reassuring to feel that and to know that she was fine and she wanted to say goodbye.
Oh,
You know, people say to me all the time, Josie, given that you know what you know, is it easier for you when you lose a loved one? And I say this all the time. Is it easier? Yes. Is it easy?
No.
Absolutely not. It's harder for us than it is for them on the other side. I
Oh,
mean, losing a loved one hurts. It really, really hurts. But I can tell you it is easier for me because I know beyond a doubt that we are all going to see our loved ones again. And just like the title of this show, Love Never Dies,
yes.
and until I go to the other side, until I die and I go to the other side, I won't stop saying that.
yeah. Yeah.
And it's God, honestly, it's the truth. And I've had so many incredible experiences, and the more these things happen to me, the more I find I need to learn. I think there's so much that we don't understand about the universe and how it all works. But the way I like to think of it is the body is just something that we wear, kind of, to allow us to experience life, to learn lessons and experience life. And then when we die, we shed the body, we go back to spirit, which is our true nature, which is our true essence. That's the best way I can explain it.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree. Yes.
Thank you, Judy, for sharing
you.
that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Big hug to you, sweetheart. I saw the tears, and tears are good. Tears are good at times. We don't like to do it, but they can be cleansing. How long's Spawn been gone? Oops. Hey, man, you're muted again. Sorry. Can't hear you.
She's
Go
been
ahead.
gone about 15 years now.
How many?
About 15. It's
Wow. Well, and that was a pretty powerful experience for you.
It was. Well, it was.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, dear.
Oh.
Josie, can we go a couple more minutes here? A few more minutes? Do you mind?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. You were talking about how she felt someone patting her hair,
Oh, yeah.
One of the most amazing things to me is when I was writing Visits from Heaven, I interviewed a mom, and she said something very interesting to me, that she actually got to hug her deceased daughter. She said that all of a sudden she saw the apparition, the spirit of her daughter. And I said to her, "You got to hug your daughter?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, what did it feel like?" She said, "Honestly, jello." She said because she wasn't solid, but but I couldn't, what's the word? I mean, she had some weight to her, so it was kind of like jello. I thought that was an interesting analogy.
Right.
Have you ever heard of that? Somebody being able to actually hug a spirit or an apparition?
I've heard. I have another medium friend who has a husband she communicates a lot with daily, actually, and she's experienced, spirit to person hug, however you want to call it. And yeah, it can be done. It can be done. Yes, very much so. Does anyone else have something to share? Otherwise, I've got something I'd like to add to this before we close. Okay. Everybody else okay for the moment? Yeah. Are you okay to go a few more minutes here?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Judy sharing her story reminded me of an experience I had back when I was developing mediumship. I was sitting in what you sit in a circle, at least when you're physically able to. You're sitting in a development circle, and you usually do some meditation, and you sit in the darkness, and you then share what you're receiving, whether it be psychically or mediumistic. And everybody communicates, and then this is a weekly class. I had a friend, his name's Terry, who was in the class with me. And we were about the same age. And what was happening was some of his loved ones were coming to me to give messages to him. And he had lost a child, and so the child was coming in too. Well, out of the blue, Terry got into an accident.
Oh.
Terry was a hemophiliac. So if he bled, he could bleed to death, okay? And he was put in on life support. And eventually the minister, knowing his beliefs, believing in the afterlife, that he did not want to be on supports, let him go. Well, I didn't realize, but his loved ones were coming in because they knew he was going to be passing soon. And it took me a while later to figure that out. And it's like they were using me in a positive way to help him when it was time for him to transition.
Mm-hmm.
And so Judy talking about her story helped me remember that. The other side of that, in all these years, this was probably late 90s, as I was just getting out in the public eye. The first time I went back to class and Terry wasn't there. Of course, people shared about their different experiences they've had because because a fellow member of the class had just passed. When I sat to close my eyes, it's the only time I have seen a spirit face, the full face, full experience that I can see when I'm in that meditative state. I could see every single detail of his eyes, his nose, his mouth. And I just cried through the closed eyes. It was tremendous for me. But I guess the reason I wanted to share that, first off, when things start coming up and I'm say hosting a show, I got to talk about it for people. It's something spirits bring into me to talk about. But the other part of this is they can use us to help them when they're getting ready to cross and we don't even realize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is tied into your book, your most recent book here. And I keep forgetting the name of it. It's like, I'm sorry. And it's, A Call from Heaven. And that's, And that's what the experience was. It was heaven was calling to me to help him out, And I guess, Josie, you've got so much knowledge. Please keep moving with it. And I know you are. We had our discussion last night. We had some other areas of discussion. Yes. So anyway, but is there something else you would like to just say here to help sum up our time together?
Well, I just want to make a comment based on what you said before. The important thing to remember when it comes to these deathbed phenomena is that deathbed, what I call visits, can happen hours, days, or even months before. Because in the spirit world, they know, when we are getting near to our time. We don't, but they know. And I can tell you a quick story. When my grandmother passed away, my grandmother passed away, and my mother told me that my grandmother told her that my grandfather was in the room with them. My mother couldn't see him. I had already left, and she told my mother, she said, "Anna, your father is here. See, he's right over there. He's right over there in the corner." And my mother said to me, this is after my grandmother passed, my mother said, I couldn't see him. I don't know what she was talking about. I thought she was imagining things. And what was interesting about that, Pamela, my cousin told me 2 weeks prior to my grandmother's death, my grandmother told her that my grandfather had come for her. And she saw my grandfather 2 weeks prior. So, like I said, there is no time the way we know it on the
No.
other side. It's
No.
like a blink of an eye for them on the other side. So I found that very interesting. Then I was a sophomore in college, and I had no idea whatsoever that I'd be doing this someday, but I didn't understand the significance of that. But my grandmother said that my grandfather had come for her 2 weeks prior, and so obviously those on the other side, they already know when we're going to cross over, and they are there for us. We do not die alone, and that brings me a lot of comfort.
Well, and they're literally, we have our loved ones here in the physical side, often sitting beside their bed, holding their hands. If they're unconscious, talking to them, just as if they could hear them. And then the spirit loved ones are all ready to switch hands with them. It's like, I'll hold your hand now once you get over here.
Right.
I'm here. I'm here to comfort you, so you're not afraid. And yes, love never dies.
Absolutely.
It keeps on going. It keeps on going.
Love is the one thing that transcends death. Okay, we take that love with us. It never leaves us. It's always there.
And you know what I've discovered too? We can multiply it too. We can expand it between our loved ones. We can do healing for if we've had issues with certain loved ones. We can heal those.
Right.
And therefore, that love just grows and grows. It grows and grows. So, Josie, people can find you through your website, which is josievarga.com.
Yes.
Okay. Your groups on Facebook are again?
Visits from Heaven. There's a closed group and an open group, and also another one called Proof of the Afterlife.
Awesome.
And by the way, I also have, for those of you who would be interested, I also have a prayer group because I truly believe in the power of prayer. So I have a prayer group, it's called the Divine Visits Prayer Group. So that's another thing that people can join.
Wonderful. And can I send you a hug from here, sweetheart?
Yeah.
I'll
hug everybody.
Yeah. And I want to send hugs to everybody because I feel like right now is a time that a lot of us are missing out on hugs because of all that's going on.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But I want to thank you for being here. Let me know when the next book is in print.
Okay.
And let's keep in touch. And I do want to let people real quickly know that I'm doing a special class. It's a special event Tuesday night. Anybody who is interested in what's channeling about, I'm going to be doing an event channeling some of the higher beings where you can get some messages and understand a little more fully about your own life, why you're here, what's going on. I can ask all kinds of questions. That's posted on my website and on my Facebook page. Thanks, Josie.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, and thank you everyone for being here, and a big thank you to Josie. Keep it up, dear.
Bye, everybody.
Thank everyone for being here. I don't know you, and I want to thank John, your hubby, for being here and supporting you. And I will send you the link, so you know where the YouTube page is. But anyway, so
okay.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.